Hey, this is a Hakawati production. Hey, friends and foes. My guest today is Ricardo Karam, a super well-established television presenter, producer, and currently the host of Tariq Al-Amal on Abu Dhabi TV. Welcome.
My pleasure.
So what is that show about?
Well, this is among many other shows I'm currently producing and presenting. But this show in particular is very dear to my heart because throughout this show, I host three different individuals who have faced an upheaval, and I try with them to see how they transformed this upheaval into a source of happiness.
What kind of upheavals are we talking about?
Any kind. It can be anything.
Are you not going to tell us about those specific ones in the show?
It can be
it's a surprise.
Physical upheaval. It can be a sickness, an illness. It can be a death in a family. It can be a personal grief. It can be a broken heart. So many different aspects are faced by so many people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you sit with those people and you envy them.
Yeah.
You might see people who are handicapped and who are very happy. And you might see some people who have mutilation and they have this inner happiness, inner peace. Whereas sometimes you've got everything and you're not happy. So listen to them, look at them, and be inspired. So this show is about inspiration. Those people are inspirational.
So we'll definitely get back to that a little bit later, but you're also working on some other really cool projects. We just talked about how you're kind of juggling several projects at once, including another TV series that investigates the world of kidnappers and the ransoms that the families of victims need to pay. Is that correct?
This is one of the shows as well. Today, in this part of the world, it has always been, but now even more and more, especially with the digital media and social media, which is, instead of connecting, is opening eyes of so many people. And you've got kidnappers all over, and you've got ransoms all over that are being required. And I believe that media is not highlighting a lot on that.
What's the name of that show? Do you have a name yet?
Al Fidya.
And for which outlet?
It is for Al TV.
Okay. Where's Al?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm sure everyone will want to watch it because it's a very interesting topic. Do you know anyone who's ever been kidnapped? I mean, why did you choose this subject?
Personally, no, I don't know.
Okay.
Personally, I don't know. But I know that there is a lot of stories ongoing here and there, whether in Lebanon or in any part of the Middle East. And today with the fundamentalists, today with the ISIS, today with the uprising political currents and integrism, I think more and more people are kidnapped or are subject to be kidnapped.
So is the show mostly focusing on Lebanon, or is it all over the Middle East?
Not at all. Yeah? It's all over the world, actually.
Ah, so where is it in the Middle East, let's say? Is there a part of the Middle East where it's more? Yeah.
Syria, Yemen.
So how do you find these stories?
In that show, this is one of the few shows I do not produce. In a sense, I'm not involved into the writings, into the scripts, into the findings or the research. I'm only the host, and I do narrate those stories my own way.
So you don't really meet the people or
no.
interview the kidnappers.
This is a show that requires a lot of research.
I can imagine.
And I would have loved to. But unfortunately, I've got so many projects at the same time. I cannot dedicate more time than what I do currently.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly an interesting topic. Actually, when I first moved to Beirut, just to quickly tell you a story, I once thought I was being kidnapped. And it was actually, I called a taxi. It was 4 years ago. And the guy started talking about how, people like to kidnap foreigners. Is that the case based on your experience in the show? Is it mostly foreigners? Like, who's getting kidnapped?
In your case, not only foreigners, beautiful foreigners.
Well, he did say that they like blondes. So I got a little nervous and I didn't recognize the route. So I made him pull over and I jumped out of that taxi like I never jumped out before. But anyways, that's a funny story. But I imagine this happens, right?
It does. But weirdly enough, in Lebanon, you don't have a lot of those stories, we have really security in Lebanon. I like what we think. I like what people think. And as a matter of fact, you will scarcely read about those stories in the papers and you hear of. At the same time, you might think that this is a society that is closed in many areas. Forget about Beirut and the urban part of Lebanon. If you go into the villages, if you go outside Beirut, people don't tend to open up and talk about those issues and those matters. It's a question of, it's a shame. And the word shame is spread all over Lebanon and in many communities, in many religious groups as well. This is something that should not be dwelled upon. So this is why maybe we don't hear or listen or read about those stories.
Well, we'll hear about them on your show, I guess. When does the show come out?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, we're waiting for it.
Yeah.
Keep us posted. You also produce documentaries. You've produced 7, I think, to date, since 2006 at least. And one of them was an interesting one that caught my eyes, one about Rafik Hariri. Where you interviewed his family members. It's been 15 years now since his assassination. Why did you do that documentary? And did you interview, first of all of the members of the family? Did you interview, for example, his sons, his daughter?
Yes, I did. It was actually 1 year after his assassination. I thought that would be a great idea. But
was that your idea?
Not all ideas can be applied and can become tangible. Sometimes you need to do things, you want to do things, and you not succeed into making them a reality. And having all the family opening up and talking to me wasn't something easy. It was a quite impossible mission. But it happened. I had them all. From Mrs. Hariri to all the children, Saad, Baha, Ayman, Hind, Fahad, and even the step-children, Jumana and Uday.
Wow.
All of them were on the show, and all of them opened up and talked to me. And it was so interesting because the wound was so fresh. And it was interesting to get them really talk about their feelings and take out of them all their obsessions, all their grief. You know, I believe that some of them wanted, in a sense, to get revenge, and some others no. They said no. You know.
Did you ask them that question specifically?
Revenge would not bring our father back.
Yeah.
So this mix of different feelings was interesting to discover and to talk about and actually to feel. And this is, what was the most interesting part of that documentary. Some people made peace with themselves. And some others no. They all differ, and they all think about it and look at it differently.
Do you think they did get some level of revenge with what happened in the Cedar Revolution?
I don't think it can ever bring their father back.
Of course not.
If you want to talk from a human perspective, I would say no. They can never embrace him. They can never tell him they love him.
Right.
They can never hug him. This is something they would never feel from a perspective of a human being. From a perspective of a leading political family, they might think, that the
because obviously they're a political family.
Changed the whole context in Lebanon, or the political environment and background in Lebanon. And maybe if hadn't he died, nothing of that would have happened. So maybe, I don't know what was going through their minds, but I can tell you from my own judgment or assessment, this is what I've saw, or this is what I've seen.
You also did another documentary in 2011 with Queen Noor Al Hussein of Jordan, which was actually the first time she ever granted an interview to an Arab TV producer or host.
Exactly. Actually, most of my guests have given me the interview for the first time. I was lucky enough to get exclusive interviews and scoops in that part of the world. I think I was the first one to decide to get out of the boundaries that were set and to fly This is what happened to me in my journey. I left Lebanon and I wanted to invade the world and interview the biggest names. But finally...
And there's quite a list of names, actually. We'll get to some of those other ones after.
Who am I to do that? Who am I to do that? So we're going to go back, actually, 20 years ago to my beginnings. But before that, let me answer your question about Her Majesty Queen Noor. Yes, I was the first one to get that interview.
Wait, did she approach you to interview her? Or, of course, you approached her?
No, Queen Noor is approached by everybody. She doesn't need me. I need a Lebanese TV station to be on.
Maybe she really liked you.
It would be,
you had a nice track record of doing, quality work.
It would be, a big compliment for me.
That's not what happened.
The case. It took me some time actually to get a yes from her.
Amazing.
However, it was the most difficult interview, and how do we say it? This was the most cursed interview I've ever done, or the most cursed work I have achieved.
How so?
Everybody was fighting that interview, and nobody wanted it to be aired. Starting from Jordan, then to different parts of the Arab world.
Did she say anything controversial? What's the reason?
Not at all. They didn't want to give her visibility, and they did not want her to be on a screen, and they wanted people to forget her completely. And I think they have put their weight in many Arab countries to forbid that interview from becoming a reality.
Wow.
And it took me 4 years to be able to air it.
I would love to watch that interview, actually.
Because each time I was about to sign an agreement with a TV station to buy the project and to air it, not the curse, but a phone call was arriving. And that phone call was forbidding that TV station from speeding up and from going onward.
So it shows how long the arms of certain regimes are in the region.
This is the Arab world.
Yes.
Don't forget.
Yes.
Forget about what you see. The format can be always nice and beautiful, but you go deep inside and you'll be shocked by reality.
And Amman is interesting because they kind of... they dance on both sides. They're not really on one side or really on the other. So it's kind of easy for them, I guess.
They are, and this is why they're surviving.
Yeah. Pretty smart.
Yeah. This is, the survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
In a very complex environment.
It's interesting. But you've interviewed lots of amazing people over the span of your career, including the Dalai Lama.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was a difficult journey. It happened in Haram Salah, and I had to fly through New Delhi, and it was the season of the monsoon.
Okay.
And at that time, we couldn't fly. So all the flights were cancelled. There were no trips to take us there to Jammu airport, as far as I remember. So we had to drive from New Delhi to Dharamsala for 14 hours.
Okay.
And
in a monsoon? Was it raining?
It was raining heavily. It was too hot, and driving.
Did you have air conditioning?
India, yeah, we had. Driving in India wasn't easy. I tried to rent a private jet and to fly with my team. It was impossible. Nobody accepted actually to fly on that day, and I had the appointment already scheduled and set, and an appointment or a meeting with Dalai Lama doesn't happen every day. So we said, we have no other choice. And you drove all night long.
Wow.
And you were singing
all
night long.
How is that possible that the Dalai Lama was like, yeah, let's do a show with this Lebanese guy? It's quite amazing. It's like, as much as you said the other thing was cursed, in some ways, these types of situations, it's quite the opposite. Does he give that many interviews?
Whenever you have a message, whenever you want to convey a message, and whenever you want the whole world to listen to your cause and to hear about your struggle, every audience counts. And Middle Easterns count. And Arab people count. You've got hundreds of millions of people who live in that part of the world. And the Dalai Lama, who has been fighting not only with China, but with many regimes, I think needs to be heard. So maybe this is the reason why they said yes for that interview. But I think at the same time, I'm perseverant and I'm quite insistent.
Yeah,
and
that's important.
In every interview I've done in my life, I did not get the positive result on the spot. It took me some time, and I worked too hard to make them a reality.
Yeah, well, that's the key to success in a lot of things that people do. But what marked you most when you met the Dalai Lama? What do you remember about him?
I remember very well the people running away from Tibet and who were arriving to the Haram Salah. And you can see them after days of running away, exhausted, tired. And whenever they were seeing him and kissing his hand, they were fainting, they were crying. And when you see them, you see how they look and how they're facing that encounter and living the moment of approaching him, of touching him, you cannot but cry. So for me, this is one of the nicest scenes and one of the nicest moments I witnessed in my life.
He's a very inspiring figure, I guess, almost bigger than life, larger than life in some ways.
Listen, the interview, the problem is that interviews, you can evaluate them differently one year after the other. The moment I had him on my show, it was a moment of privilege, of course. And I remember I went out of the interview a new man. The year after, I saw it differently. Your old interviews, you cannot look at them from the same point of view.
Yeah.
Because you change. Your perceptions change.
Right.
The vision of things change. And I do change.
So did you feel transformed? Is that what you're saying after your interview in some ways?
Transform? No, this is a big word.
Well, changed.
Affected.
Affected, yeah.
Positively.
That's a good one. That's amazing. I don't want to belittle him because, of course, he's so inspiring. But a few weeks ago, Newsweek had a story on, they had a quote from him basically saying that a female successor must be attractive or people won't want to look at her face, which was actually obviously made fun of in the media by a lot of people. It kind of was funny coming from him because he's such a force of nature and usually he's so wise. And then also
you should know the person, or you should meet him to understand that he has a lot of humor.
Oh, so you think that was humor?
And I remember very well that in half of that long interview, really, it was, he was laughing all the time. And
really?
It was, full of anecdotes and of jokes. And this is, how he is.
So you think he was being...
Whenever there is spirituality and philosophy and you want to talk about that, you need to approach things in an easy way.
Yeah.
And you need to have that easygoing approach. And I think if he wanted, or if he was meant to talk in a very deep way, masses wouldn't understand him. Mm-hmm. So for him to reach the highest number of people, I think he needs to make things easy and simplify them.
Now that you put it that way.
And maybe this is why he said what he said.
And maybe he's... PR, like a marketing PR genius, and he knew that maybe people weren't really paying attention too much, and he's like, let me say something that will really get people talking.
All the leaders
smart.
Are marketing products.
Yeah,
not one single leader, even in the history, all of them they were made by a big marketing team. Mm-hmm. Now we call them marketing. Long time ago, we used to call them PR. Before PR, I don't know what they used to call them. But however, there's always
publicists?
A group of people who know how to convey the image and who know how to project the image of the persona.
And how to create buzz, basically.
Of course. Jamal Abdel Nasser wouldn't have been Jamal Abdel Nasser if he did not have all this support of the media and all those TV channels filming him and airing his speeches, talking to people. He had the charisma, it's true, but media helped a lot.
Yeah, definitely. You also interviewed Bill Gates. Mm-hmm. Where did that happen?
It happened in Riyadh. I had two choices.
Of course, in Riyadh. Where else?
I had two choices.
The Silicon Valley of the Middle East.
Either now?
Not really.
Not now.
No.
Not yet.
Maybe in 2030.
No, maybe before. Maybe even before.
Yeah.
I had two different choices, two different options. Either to go to Seattle and make the interview happen over there. Of course, going to his own background, to his own context, to his own environment would have been more interesting.
Right.
However, I did not want to jeopardize the opportunity of getting him. Mm-hmm. He is somebody difficult to get, and he's not well outspoken. Mm-hmm. although he is well-read.
Well-spoken, you mean?
Not outspoken.
Yeah.
He does not open up easily.
Yes.
Melinda is much better, his wife.
Right.
They said, well, you can have him for 25 minutes, or we can have 40 minutes in Seattle a couple of months after. I said, no, I'll do him now.
You should have said, I want both.
To be definitely, no. In life, you cannot have everything. Whatever you do in life.
That's just an interview with Bill Gates, not everything.
You always need to pick the right option.
Okay.
And life teaches you how to cope with changes and how to grab opportunities. It was an opportunity, and I grabbed it, and I got it.
And what did he talk about in that interview?
Philanthropy. This is, his favorite topic. And of course, the most important thing about that interview is that I discovered that the richest man in the world can be normal. We can see people here in the Arab world who've got money and who do not know how to show that money. Sometimes I go to New York, to DC, to Aspen, and I see some Arabs who are flying there and who've got hundreds of people with them.
Yeah, I've heard of those planes landing in New York.
And you see Bill Gates in his private jet with a little group with him, 3-4 people. You see him driving, going to Starbucks in Seattle with his children, with his wife, going to a restaurant, having a normal life. This is what normal people are.
But when you interviewed him, what made you think that he's like a normal guy?
His approach, his clothes, his watch.
What was he wearing? What kind of watch was he wearing?
Do you remember?
Rolex,
a very simple Rolex.
Okay.
His suit, normal one.
Yeah.
2 assistants, and that's it. The richest man on this planet.
Yeah.
And actually, you don't have to listen to him. You need to follow what he does. When you see what Bill Gates is doing to humanity, to poor people, the people who are suffering from malaria in Africa and other diseases, you cannot but bow to that. Because that guy could be spending a beautiful time with his family, friends, enjoying, dancing, drinking.
Yeah.
And look where he is now. The only motto in life is to serve the community and to give back to community.
Do you think he's really making like a real difference in those places with his projects?
What do you think? He has saved millions.
I know that you usually host your own shows, but I asked you the question.
This is of public knowledge. Everybody knows it.
But I mean, compared to other organizations, there's lots of organizations that are doing projects. What I mean, not a real difference, but a significant difference, more than others, considering that he's the wealthiest man in the world and that he's so powerful. Is it more impactful, say, than other
I think that
organizations?
Warren Buffett and Bill Gates have done not only significant change, they changed the whole concept of philanthropy worldwide.
See, that's an interesting point.
Those are real models, real models we all look up at. And we all hope to approach one of those days if God grants us what they were granted.
Right. Well, we've talked a lot about the public figures you've interviewed, but a lot of your shows also tells, as you talked about in the beginning, you like to tell the stories of regular people. You did a show also back in 2011, I think, after the Iraqi war, the Gulf War, where you interviewed Iraqis from around the world,
exactly.
The diaspora, about their successes, because I guess, they were kind of portrayed in the media. It was just a sad story, and I guess it was nice to portray successful, happy, positive stories of Iraqis.
Exactly. I've picked 26 Iraqis living abroad, living in different parts of the world, from different fields. And I wanted to compile those people, to bring them all together. And
people like in scientists, medical, political, philanthropy, like all kinds of different fields, right?
In the world of art, culture, I remember, I've hosted a lady called Nada Shabout. Nada has been working tirelessly for the past 10 years to restore all the antiquities and all the art pieces that were stolen and that were robbed from the museums of Iraq.
Well, not the stealing part, but
remarkable lady.
Yeah,
I went to meet
painstaking work.
Zaha, I think one of the most important Arab women the world has known. Yeah. I went to meet
I love
Rifat Jazirji, another great architect and one that I believe equals what Zaha did. And actually, Zaha in her show, she attacked him. And she finds that what he does not apply to today's reality. Whereas himself criticizes as well Zaha Hadid. It was interesting. And I met so many Iraqis. Listen, I believe Levantines and communities of the Levant are spread. And today you see Syrian people scattered. You see Palestinians with no homeland. You see Lebanese scattered all over the world, migrating, leaving their country. And there is a lot of similarities between Iraqis, Lebanese, Syrians, Palestinians. They left, and their strength is within a lobby they can constitute. And I wanted to be an initiator of that lobby. And this is why I had a lot of Palestinians who live here and there. They were remarkable. They have no land, they have no passport, but they have their successes. And
why do you think that is? What is it about people from that region, that group of countries?
Maybe there's a part in their genes.
Because you're right. I mean, if you go to Mexico or South America, a lot of the most successful people are from this part of the world.
Listen, the First World War made people leave. At the beginning of the previous century, they left, they settled. They went in boats and they settled in those parts of the world. They had nothing and they brought their families one after the other. And they had no other choice than succeeding.
Do you think that
when you need to survive,
right,
you need to make it happen.
Yeah.
There is nobody you can count on. And difficulties shape us. They make us. They transform us. And those biggest success stories you're talking about or you're referring to, whether in Uruguay, in Mexico, and Buenos Aires, and Sao Paulo, they were made by Levantines, Syrians, Lebanese, Palestinians. They had no other choice than succeeding. And I love that. I love challenges. And I love people who inspire me. I need to be empowered.
I think we have that in common. And I think that's why I chose to be in media. It's kind of one of the rare professions where you have the opportunity to appreciate other people's lives. And, for a change, most people obsess about their own lives. It's one of the few professions where you can, kind of focus on other people's lives and really get into it and be inspired. And there are so many inspiring stories.
I had the opportunity of going into the commercial aspect of media. I had great offers to work in the field of varieties, entertainment, to host singers and artists and do varieties. And this is something I've always refused.
Why?
First of all, it's not me. Then I wouldn't make any social impact on the others. My main motto was that social impact.
So you're not an entertainer?
Far from being that. I entertain people with interesting stories and with interesting content. I am for content. I don't care about tabloid. And if that person got married with the other, and if they got divorced, and if they're in love or no, it's not at all what matters to me.
Yeah.
What matters to me is to be able to touch you, touch your heart, to empower you, to motivate you, to push you to go onward and forward. This is what matters to me. I chose a difficult path, but I'm happy that 20 years, almost 25 years after, what I have planted, or the seeds of what I planted, started blossoming. And I'm happy to see that today success is a title, or is a field, or is a state of mind everybody's trying to reach in every field. Today, all the media in the Arab world, they care about successful people.
Yeah.
Newspapers,
yeah,
magazines, billboards, talks, conferences, forums.
It's very idealized.
They all bring,
yeah,
those success stories. At the time, 20 years ago, 22 years ago, the first time I had a successful Lebanese, the TV station I used to work with, said, this is a loss of money. We'll not invest on that. And I insisted. And And I recall the first time I went outside Lebanon, and I've interviewed Gabriel Yared, who had the Oscar for the English Patient soundtrack, and I aired the show.
Isn't he performing at a festival?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Betadine Festival. I'm talking 1997.
Yeah.
A long time ago. And it was aired on June 21st. The Fête de la Musique. You know, the
He's
fiesta.
a pianist, right? A composer. Plays the piano.
Gabriel?
Yeah.
And he plays on different instruments.
Yeah.
But he's a big composer.
Yes.
You know, The Cold Mountain, The English Patient, Camille Claudel, all those big movies.
Amazing, yeah.
He made the music. And Troy, and, you know,
wow.
And got the Oscar for that.
Yes.
And it was, for the first time, a spot of hope, a spot of light in the TV industry and on the TV scene in Lebanon.
Interesting.
And then I went further, and I got Nicholas Hayek, the guy that founded Swatch Group, the Swatch watches. He was the one behind, and he built an empire. And then I went and I got Zaha Hadid, and then I went and got Carlos Ghosn, and all those people were not known at all by the public. It was a pure jeopardy for TV stations to invest on that kind of show. Today, all of them, you know, they want to have on their screens those successes.
What's interesting is that the Middle East is known for having very creative and enterprising population, you know, the number of people who are entrepreneurs and stuff. And perhaps there's something about what you were doing in those days, those kinds of stories that kind of shape the minds of young people and make them believe that they can do that too. So it's a nice way to think about it, I guess, if that's what you're doing.
100%, yeah.
You're also quite passionate about shining light on some issues. You're on the board of governors of, how do you pronounce this? Amid East?
No, I'm not.
You're
at
not
all.
anymore?
I'm not at all. You know, I was the keynote speaker in Los Angeles.
Oh, I see. You're not on the board. Okay.
No, I was the keynote speaker, and it's about education. I'm too much obsessed with education. I believe that education.
Yeah, because that's an organization that fights illiteracy in the Middle East.
I think education can eradicate all this ignorance and the different political regimes in the Arab world. They have been working in the direction of keeping people completely ignorant. They want people to look only around them.
Sure.
To think only about the vital things, the primitive things, eating, sleeping, and watching TV.
So you think that a lot of governments in the Middle East consciously try to maintain ignorance. How do they do that?
Poverty. Mm-hmm. This is one. Media.
Controlling the media.
This is two. And not only that, you know, the content the media is conveying. There is no content. Mm-hmm. And most of the media, and most of the TV stations, and most of the newspapers and magazines. You go to Egypt, you know, thousands of years of civilizations and cultures. You've got remarkable people, but at the same time, you've got millions of people. You know, I have 100 million people in Egypt. Well, they do nothing, people.
Yeah.
They know nothing.
They used to have a really good entertainment industry, like cinemas, but I feel like it doesn't seem like they're not even active so much with this.
The movie industry has changed a lot. It's finished the era of what Faten Hamama did with the big directors. You know, she was the first woman to claim and to fight for the rights of women 50 years ago, 6 years ago. In her movies, when she was divorced, when she had kids to raise alone, where women had no right at all, she was among the first fighters. Now the society has changed a lot. And the era has changed. And movies are not impactful anymore. And actually, you've got no more viewers anymore. People watch soap operas. We are so much influenced by the Turkish novellas. Yeah. They all air Turkish soap operas.
So I would say you're right, definitely, when you're talking about, you know, the masses. But I think there's a certain segment of society all over the world and in the Middle East that's shifting to on-demand content, which is like a whole other story, which we'll discuss in a bit. But you also founded Takrim, an organization that recognizes also successful people in the Middle East. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Takrim is a foundation that saw the light in the year 2009. It was founded consequently to my TV programs. As I've told you earlier, I was the first one to introduce and to feature in my shows those success stories who are not known. And I have felt and I have witnessed the interest people have shown toward those shows. And I was always saying, well, those shows will come and go. I need to create something that would be sustainable. And I started thinking, what can I do that can sustain and remain and last? And Takrim was the project of my life. So I created that platform.
So it's an organization that
gathers successful people.
You
so
basically give awards, correct?
Every year we work into spotting 8 achievers from Arab origin.
Do you look for them or they apply for the awards?
If I can find, yes, I will propose. I will suggest names, of course. But the mechanism of selection is very complex and difficult and tough. You've got 2 different phases. You've got hundreds of people involved in that. You've got the first board that represents all the Arab world. 90 people are involved in that board. For each category, you've got 10 people.
Yeah.
And they shortlist the names. Sometimes we've got 100 candidates per category. And after shortlisting, 3 only remain. And then you've got the board, the jury board that gathers in Europe, whether London or Paris. And for a whole day, the board deliberates and decides who the winners are.
So the board, is it mostly comprised of like mostly people from the Middle East?
People from the Middle East, most of them, of course, big names. Queen Noor Al-Hussein, Lakhdar Ibrahimi, Queen Noor Al-Hussein from Jordan, Lakhdar Ibrahimi from Algeria, André Azoulay from Morocco.
So every year
Sheikh
you do.
Abdullah Sabah from Kuwait, Sheikh Hamad Khalifa from Bahrain.
So you're shining a light on these people that are doing good things for the region. And do they end up getting more press as a result and more attention and more support?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's good.
This is the objective, is to give them visibility.
Yeah.
They're all unsung heroes. They don't like to talk about what they do.
Yeah.
And they've decided to work in silence. But you're here to beg them and to ask them, please, you need to be with us.
That's
You're
kind
remarkable.
of a nice side effect
Talk
of
to
what
people,
you're doing.
empower them.
Definitely.
They need hope.
So I hear you're also getting into podcasting, interestingly enough. I think, was your first job in radio?
Yeah.
Your first job ever? You were an intern at a station called Magic 102?
I was 16 years old. I loved it.
Yeah? What did you do there?
I loved it. I was a radio broadcaster. And if you ask me what are the best years of your life, I would say definitely when I used to be a radio broadcaster. I loved it.
How long did you do that?
4 years.
And what were you talking about on the radio? Like news?
At that time, I was 16. I was
They let
juvenile. I was
they
so
let you
young.
on the air at 16 years old?
Yeah, my voice was not ready yet to be on air. And
they were like, is that a woman or is it a man?
This is not that, but you can see it was a teenager talking.
Yeah.
It was
That's
a teenager.
so cute.
I loved it. I was so fond of music, spending all my pocket money buying LPs at that time. We had no CDs, don't forget. We were in the 80s, mid-80s.
Yeah.
And
is that here in Beirut?
In Beirut.
Okay.
1987. I was so fond of Madonna, Michael Jackson, of course, Elton John is my favorite singer.
Still?
And still. And I used to talk about, those singers, those bands, the releases, the new songs. And it was my world.
That's such a nice story. Do you think podcasting is obviously super exciting right now all over the world, and it's kind of catching up here in the Middle East, which is probably why you're getting on it. But do you think that it's kind of, we call it here kind of radio 2.0. Do you think it's the rebirth of radio? Do you think we've been so bombarded with visual content that there's this craving for audio, which really allows you to focus on the information a little bit better? You're not distracted by 2 senses. You're only focusing on 1 sense. And it kind of gives your imagination more room to work. When someone is telling a story, you're imagining, you kind of might feel more the story because you're imagining it and relating to it, as opposed to being told what the story looks like when you're watching an image. What do you think about that?
Listen, till now, I'm a big fan of radios, and I do listen to radios very often. BBC is, one of my favorite, and I love radios. I love using this sense, and not all my senses. I'm not a TV person. We do not watch TV very often, my wife and I. We read a lot, and whenever I don't read, I listen to radio. I love that. However, the podcast thing is something that was initiated by my team. They encouraged me to do it, and they convinced me. And then I met a wonderful lady, Rhea Shadid, and Rhea is the one who pushed me, actually, and who convinced me.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. It's going to be in Arabic?
Yes.
Okay. You were born in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you grew up?
No, not at all. I was only born, and I came back to Lebanon when I was a few months old.
Where are you traveling to mostly?
I do the States 3 times a year, and Europe on a monthly basis, and the Arab country on a weekly basis.
What are you doing in the States and Europe?
I go and check on my bank accounts.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That you really shouldn't have them there in the States. You should find other places.
They are all
Cayman
over,
Islands. What?
They're all over, don't worry.
They're all over? Okay.
I remember, I was interviewed not long time ago by a Lebanese journalist, and he told me, they say you have a private jet, and they say you've got houses in Paris and London, and you have a boat, and how come a journalist was able to build up what you built? I told them, you forgot. I have a house in Beijing, another one in Costa Rica.
Do you?
And I have in Acapulco as well, a beautiful mansion. And I don't have a private jet. I've got 2 private jets. So I was kidding, of course, with that guy. Where are those stories coming from?
You had me going there for a second.
I think I wouldn't have been able to do what I do, to achieve what I achieved, hadn't I had the opportunity of traveling, of not melting, but igniting those contacts with people abroad, with foundations, special individuals. All those friendships I have built were not built randomly. I worked into making them happen. I think that I was lucky enough to be able to spend time to sit with the laureates of Nobel Prize, with big writers, big journalists, big doctors. They shaped me. They made me who I am today. And this is an opportunity that does not happen to everyone.
Yeah.
I made it happen in a way, but at the same time, circumstances helped me in making this dream become a reality.
Yeah. I know you're very busy. We were talking about that before the show, that, it's the kind of job that's super rewarding, but also very demanding. And you're always thinking about what you're going to do next and how you need to prepare. But what do you do in your little spare time that you have? Are you into sports?
I am. I play tennis a couple of times a week, and I run. I've got my private trainer.
How often do you run?
2-3 times a week.
Okay.
I ski.
Okay.
Wintertime. I read a lot.
Yeah, that's a great sport
I
for
listen
the
to
mind.
music.
Yeah, that too.
I love discovering new restaurants worldwide and new cuisines. And that's it. Then I have 3 kids. I take care of my kids and of my wife. And it needs time.
Yeah. That's well-balanced. Sounds like a well-balanced life. So I think our time is up. Thanks so much for coming on.
It was my pleasure being with you. And by the way, for those who do not know you, you're a very pretty lady.
Thank you. Hey, give us just one more second of your time to like and comment on this episode. Don't forget to find us on hakawati.com and follow us on themensroom.show. Hasta la vista, baby.